Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we want to review the brand new Synology DS925 Plus, possibly one of the most contentious releases this brand has ever had. The last few weeks have had a lot of discussion about this solution and what it represents moving forward from the brand. And in this video, we're going to talk about this system, what it gives, what it doesn't, and of course touching on perhaps some of the details that have been cropping up over the last few weeks and how they reference this and the product strategy moving forward from Synology. But a TLDR real quick, this is the brand new 4-bay solution from the brand. This is an expandable 4-bay supporting 4 SATA drives that can be expanded with a 5-bay expansion. It arrives with a 4-core 8-thread processor, ECC memory, and finally 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, because this system has got a lot of mixed balancing acts that it's trying to perform as Synology rejig their portfolio. But before we go any further, let's talk a little bit about the design of this thing. Real quick though, I'm going to say straight away, this video was always going to be tough to make because there are going to be users watching this who are already deep in the Synology ecosystem and are considering this as an upgrade to their 5, 7, maybe even 10-year NAS solution. But there may be some of you watching this that have never had a Synology solution and you're moving away from the cloud, maybe moving away from another brand. So it's going to be very difficult to find a line in this video where I'm going to be covering everything to everyone's satisfaction without the video being 10 hours long. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff to do with this system, and I'm going to be talking about the software later, but I will say I'm going to be doing a much deeper dive video after this that's going to be longer and includes a lot more stuff. I've already got about halfway through it, so if you've got any other stuff you want to see mentioned in that video, go to the comments below. But for now, let's talk about the design. Whether you know about them or not, Synology have had this similar chassis to this since about 2018-19. It's very popular, it's very petite, it does a great balancing act in terms of design. It also does a great job in terms of cooling, active cooling and noise as well, something we'll talk about more in a moment. And with the system arriving again at that 550 to 600 nickel price point, this is a price point that Synology have maintained on this particular system that they've refreshed every 2 to 3 years for more than a decade. So although it looks like the same box that people may have bought in 2015, 16, 17, I'll say right now there have been small tweaks and improvements in line with the hardware that's gone inside this. Now, first up, I want to talk about noise. So I set this system up with 3 Synology branded drives inside of mixed capacities, the logic and reason for which, by the way, will become clearer later on in the video. But when I had the system in idle, so that was the RAID configuration, all synchronization completed and no active connections, and the fans at that variable adjustment rate, the audio level was around 36 to 37 dB8 when in operation. Now, when I had all of the drives being heavily accessed there and 2x 2.5 gigabit connections on the bounce, it achieved 48 to 50 dBA audio level. So again, a lot of that was coming from the drives themselves. So let's have a little listen to all of those side by side. So bottom line, if you are going to be utilizing this system with more enterprise grade drives, or the HAT 5300 to be precise, series of drives, be aware that those larger capacity hard drives and certainly the enterprise grade hard drives are going to generate way more noise than the system and its fans itself. Next up, let's talk about power consumption. Now, throughout those tests, I was trying to record it as much as possible, but we will be going into further detail on this in that deep dive video that's going to come soon. But when the system was in idle, so once again, we had the base apps installed, but no active access, and the full RAID synchronization was completed, it was hitting around 28 watts there. Now, when I went ahead with full system utilization, so that's a 4th drive installed there, 2x 2.5 gigabit Ethernet active connections, SSDs as well inside there. So that was the system with both drives and CPU utilization at max. It was hitting around 62 to 64 watts. Keep in mind this arrives with a 100 watt PSU included in the box, and although it could be argued that on Synology's own pages, they have reported a much lower power consumption both in idle and active, it's worth highlighting that when we look at how Synology has measured power consumption in the past on their systems, they generally seem to use SSDs when showing off these power numbers. So that would probably explain the disparity between my numbers and the ones reported on the official pages. And finally, at different points during the testing, I did test the temperature of this system at 1 hour and at 24 hours. This was with intermittent access during the RAID building, and then when it was in idle. This is also during some scrubbing that was taking place. On top of that, when I was installing the apps and sort of running and peaking up to that 100% utilization there, and I was quite happy with the temperature numbers I saw. I saw at the 1 hour mark around 35 to 39 degrees, and at the 24 hours mark, again, it based quite well at 34 to 36 degrees there. Now, this is a system that's got a plastic external chassis housing that metal internal infrastructure, which you can kind of see through all the ventilation during all of those thermo readings. But nonetheless, I was really pleased with the temperature numbers on this system. When the dual rear fans, when a lot of 4-bay systems in the market right now only have a single fan, this has 2 singular fans and tons of ventilation based all the way through the system, and ventilated panels on either side and on the base as well. Now, port and connectivity on this device are certainly something of a give and take scenario. Whether you're already invested in the brand or you are someone that's looking at this and you're not really in the know, I'll say straight away, let's start with the good. They've got their USB connectivity on this. We've got that front-mounted USB there. No one-touch copy button, but it does allow for 5 gigabits per second connectivity with external connected drives. Unfortunately, Synology have pared back a lot of the USB compatibility on these systems. They say for reasons of security, so you can't attach network upgrade to there. You can attach UPSs, but again, the majority of USB devices aren't really supported anymore, but I will say USB storage drives are handled quite well with their backup applications and a lot of their VM software as well, that you can patch those USBs to an active VM. You can run lots of VMs in this as well, by the way. Now, when we look at the rear of the connectivity there, we can see there on the rear that we've got another USB port, again, a 5 gigabits per second USB, but there's also 2 times 2.5 gigabit Ethernet there. Now, again, maybe you're new to the brand and you don't know, but 2.5 GBE is a big deal on this because Synology have been behind the curve on this for a very long time. Most brands rolled out 2.5G around about 2020. Then finally adding this, increasing from standard gigabit Ethernet onto 2.5, has significantly upgraded the network potential of this device. You're still 4 bays, even with hard drives, still going to be hitting something of a bottleneck at 2 times 2.5 GBE, even if you use port trunking, SMB multi-channel, or even you're using variations of that like load balancing. But still, 2.5 GBE an upgrade on this and maintaining that similar price point before is something to be applauded. However, they've removed the 10 gigabit network upgrade. The predecessor to this, the DS923 Plus, had an upgrade slot that allowed you to add a 10 gig NIC upgrade. This doesn't have that anymore. So on the one hand, I'm really pleased they've upgraded the baseline network connectivity here, but the fact I can't scale up to 10 GBE is super annoying. Another change by the brand is how expansions work on this. This device, which has got those 4 bays, can be expanded to a 9 total storage bay solution. And that is with utilizing the DX525 that Synology have rolled out that connects via USB-C. Predecessors to this took advantage of eSATA, which took advantage of the DX513 and DX517 respective to their generations. But I will say, as glad as I am to see USB-C on this, I do still have questions that I wasn't able to find answers for currently on most of the official pages. Number one, what is the speed of that USB port there? I know it isn't USB 10 gig, but given that the eSATA connection that came before it, eSATA being 6 gigabits per second, is this running at 5 gigabits per second as an expansion port, or is it taking advantage of 6 gig and it's using a kind of passover where the original board was tapped for eSATA there and they've had to use some kind of adapter? Am I capped at 5 gig and actually reducing the bandwidth with the new expansion, or am I taking advantage of 6 gigabits per second USB? And that leads to my second question. I understand they've got a very unique portfolio and they want to keep things within certain brackets, but if you are taking advantage of USB as an expansion port there, this system has 2 other USB ports there. So it is an effective choice by the brand, if it is standard USB, to not allow expansions to be connected to that front and rear port. That could have increased the storage capacity of this device by a further 10 bays with 2 of those expansions there. The hardware inside can handle it, I'm sure. So I'm kind of surprised and I have questions about those, something I'm hoping to find out more about when I deep dive this system in the follow-up video. Next, let's discuss the internal hardware, because this takes advantage of an AMD embedded Ryzen processor there, the AMD V1500B. It's got 4 cores and 8 CPU threads to play with there. If you are going to take advantage of containers, you're going to take advantage of virtual machines, this CPU is a much better pick than that of its predecessor, with a great deal more kind of areas to cut up and spread across your virtual device deployment there. Also, it's a CPU that is quite good at simple file transmission. It's got an absolute plethora of lanes to play with. One of the things that annoys me about that PCIe slot being removed on this is that CPU definitely has the kind of internal bandwidth to get the job done, but that CPU, in terms of file transmission and handling what DSM and software services in a modern NAS can do, it is a good little pick there in terms of efficiency versus capability there. There are definitely going to be users that are still really unhappy about it not being an Intel integrated graphics processor or even AMD Vega graphics enabled processor there, but unfortunately the door has closed for Synology on that significantly, not just in the way they've changed their software platform, but clearly they've rejigged their portfolio to create systems for multimedia use much further down the pipeline there in terms of their 2-bay and the 4-bay solutions, currently the DS224 Plus and the DS423 Plus, both of which are going to see a refresh in the coming months. But that CPU is still going to be pretty darn good for DSM services. Synology had that CPU in a lot of their SMB 6 and 8 and 12 bay solutions released in between 2020 and 2022. And that CPU has moved within the product family towards this tier of their portfolio, something Synology tends to do when they spend more and more time developing and innovating within certain CPU profiles. So this isn't unusual to see this CPU move down the family. Nonetheless, I know that CPU is going to mix people's feelings a little bit. But one thing that I don't think will mix people's feelings is the support of ECC memory. Again, 550 to 600 NICA, depending on where you are in the world. I will say a CPU like this combined with ECC memory at this hardware profile is rare. Very, very few 4-bay turnkey NAS solutions have ECC at this point. And the fact that Synology included there, I know, still to this day, gives a lot of thumbs from a lot of the home labor community that still want to go for a turnkey solution rather than going DIY. Again, there are more powerful systems out there, but Synology's system seems to be more based on efficiency, and in that model, that makes sense. Bottom line, when you compare it against its predecessor, the DS925 Plus is actually a surprisingly comprehensive device. And you know, once you look into the upgrade of 2.5 GBE, you look into things like the CPU, they're adding more cores and more threads. There's actually quite a lot to like about it. So I don't quite understand where the problem lies. Oh, we really need to talk about the whole compatibility thing now. If you're not aware, Synology in the 2025 generation of devices have changed the way they verify third-party storage media used in their systems, and arguably are going about it quite aggressively. The initial messaging for it has been a little bit messy, but the bottom line is right now Synology are revamping the drives that are on their compatibility listings. And at the time of recording, right now, only Synology branded hard drives are on the compatibility list for both hard drives and SSD. Now, the brand says things will change. They are planning on adding more drives over time as verification and certification of the working drives on this 2025 series moving forward are compatible. Now, that would be lovely to have at launch, and hopefully that's something that will be remedied quickly. But at the very least right now, when you try to use third-party drives, the results are significantly more jarring than any other device that came before it. Now, to put that into perspective, I set this device up with one Synology 4TB drive in their Plus series and two 8TB drives in their Plus series. I did this because I wanted to double check that SHR works. It still does, Synology Hybrid RAID, where you can mix and match the drives. And I wanted to check expandability with that 4th bay later on. I'm pleased to say that using the Synology drives, the setup was as seamless as ever. It was quick, it installed DSM, it allowed me to set up storage pools, the whole kit and caboodle. Tick. However, when I tried to initialize the device with even just a single 24TB Seagate Ironwolf 24TB drive, I could not even initialize the system. Now, this is significantly more black and white in terms of how much drive, from third parties you can use right now compared with the predecessors, although it'll at least allow you to add them, but give you significant warnings along the way. Now, you cannot even initialize this system without drives that are already on the compatibility list, which does make me wonder how the delivery of updated listings for drives on DSM for this system using a downloaded .pat file are going to be delivered if you set up the device the first time. Use a drive that isn't on a compatibility list, but a newer version of the .pat downloadable file that you're then going to have to download manually onto the system to add compatible drives that are added later on is going to be conducted. I'm sure there will be a way, but right now it feels clunky, and it's going to make a lot of users that buy this on day one wonder about the compatibility of drives and whether they're going to hold off till later. Now, you can utilize an existing Synology setup. So if you have an older generation Synology device, a smaller one at the very least or equal size, you can take those drives out, put them in this system, and it will notice DSM, and then it will carry over your existing setup. So you can still use third-party non-listed compatible drives on the system in that migration methodology, but keep in mind that once you do set it up, the system will have a whole series of warnings regarding verification, unverified drives, and ultimately will bombard you in lots of amber and red text along the way. So if you're setting it up for someone else, be prepared that that is something they're going to have to get used to. You can't turn those warnings off. Weirdly, however, when you go ahead and install SATA SSDs for initialization, I went and tried to set up DSM on this full initialization with a SATA SSD. It didn't lock me out. I was able to set the device up from cold with this and then install DSM on this and run this utilizing a third-party SSD that wasn't on the compatibility listing there. So these verification limitations that have been applied to this newer generation of devices seemingly, at least now at the time of recording, only impact hard drives and not SSDs, which again is really inconsistent about this whole rollout. And before you ask, no, you can't install drives inside this system with DSM installed using Synology drives, like the 3 Synology drives I've got inside, and then try to expand with a third-party unsupported drive. I tried to do that with a 24TB on this SHR, and the system would not allow me to use that drive, not as a hot spare. It wouldn't let me utilize it to expand the existing pool with a third-party drive. So again, until the supported list of drives gets increased upon, if that does indeed happen, you are kind of very strictly limited to those Synology labeled drives currently. And the same goes for M.2 NVMe's as well. Previous generations only allowed you to use Synology labeled drives for M.2 NVMe storage pools, but you could use third-party drives for caching. This system, on the other hand, again, at the time of recording, does not even allow me to use third-party drives for caching either. So this really is a shut down all the bolts right now situation, but hopefully Synology will add more supported drives via their compatibility listing, and numerous sources have told me the verification of these drives is underway. Again, I'll believe it when I see it, but that the verification, a lot of it is being done on the third-party side, on Seagate side, on WD side more and more. And I don't know whether that is Synology offloading the work to them to do it for the sake of efficiency. But again, we're going to have lots of different firmwares across multiple different drives, different model IDs. So how that verification takes place and is going to be blanket across multiple systems. Again, this is a lot of unknowns and a very messy rollout for this new policy. But for a lot of users that are buying this for Synology DSM and the applications and services, this is all nothing. And if you've got the money and you've got the availability of Synology drives in your region, and a lot of regions do actually have access to Synology drives at quite affordable prices, at the very least at the value level, it's going to be about that software. So let's talk about DSM on this system, shall we? What is there that I could tell you about DSM that I've not already told you 100 times before? Whether it is the surveillance platform, the whole DSM platform as a whole, whether you want to be using it for backups, multimedia, want to use it for security and more, I've covered a lot. Indeed, I've done a whole guide series where you can work out exactly how to use your system. But more importantly, before you go ahead and buy something like this, it'll also help you understand what its capabilities are. So I will link to these all in the description, but these will basically walk you through everything that the DS925 can actually do. But if we're to do a crazy version, it still is today the kind of gold standard for NAS software. If you want usability, you want functionality, you want a smooth UX, and you want a lot of the modern feature set of NAS. Everything down the control panel, for example, easy to use, creating new users, setting up shared folders, all those different protocols as mentioned, setting up remote access, managing the network in the whole interface, the whole layout of your local area network and remote access securely is conducted here. In the application center, it really breaks things down. If we go through here, we can either a look at the range of apps and services I've installed, or to go straight to the App Center for the full gamut of first and third party apps. You have things like Active Backup for Business. Active Backup, for those that aren't aware, is their premier backup service, no license required. It allows you to create full OS level and file level backups if you choose of different NAS solutions, your client systems, PC and Mac, physical third-party servers, and more. And it breaks down comprehensively with client applications that you can download locally for, again, your own mobile or desktop system. And it's migrated between a myriad of different backup applications too, such as Hyper Backup, which is more of a modular two-way backup service, or those USB backups with the dedicated USB backup appliance here. There's tons to be getting on with here. A virtual machine appliance that doesn't require any additional licenses there for most users. We've got, for example, the container application that allows you to, create kind of remote, small, deployable instances of applications and services rather than the full OS level application. You've got their multimedia services from Synology Photos all the way through to Audio Station, and just, although they've removed a lot of stuff such as Video Station, which is still a very unpopular choice, I'd say, online, they do still support third-party media server apps, again, like Plex Media Server, or taking advantage of MB. Managing your files and services is easy within File Station. You've got it here built into the web browser, and again, you can synchronize this with your local client, and from here manage all of the files on your system. And by the way, when you are accessing these, you have full contextual access. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you want to look at photos, for example, or if you want to play audio files, you want to play video files, they'll all play within this web browser. You'll be able to use standard protocols that you would get used to utilizing in the likes of your desktop, Windows Explorer and more, to access these files, download the files, stream the files. It's all there. And again, if you do want to share files, it's done really easily with contextual right-click options and a myriad of customization options as well. If you want to create more secure and protected areas of storage, you can go ahead, create a new shared folder, and from there, give it a name, carry on. Do you want a recycle bin? Where do you want it to live? And from there, if we go for test 2, we can go ahead and choose if we wish to encrypt that folder, or if we wish, depending if we're using BTRFS, write once read many integration that allows you to have storage that is completely undeletable for a given period of days, weeks, months, or years, or just only deletable by a system admin. And full control of these areas is managed very easily, both on a user and group level. So for example, if we go for a guest user here, we can choose what things this user can use, what this user can access, to what extent they can utilize it, and how fast they can utilize it. And it can all be managed very easily, right up to the point where you can delegate administration to a user temporarily for troubleshooting if needed. The user interface is very customizable with your own splash screen, and again, that extends all the way down to exactly the port and access point that you want to choose to allow this GUI to be accessed by your system user. And again, you can attribute and change these to different apps and services if you need. And if at any point you need guidance, the DSM help service built in here does have full animated GIFs and guidance on exactly how to set things up for the first time, and also guides you contextually with the setup options as needed. Security matters are handled by the system easily, and thanks to the security advisor, this allows you to set the rules in the beginning of just what kind of service you can utilize this system with, set up a scheduled scan, and periodically it will check for the strength of passwords. It will check out the strength of your IP connections, your auto block, all that kind of stuff, and things you can do to improve and secure your system even further. And at any point you want to secure or change security settings for an individual user, you can do it from the contextual menu here, allowing you to not only change standard password stuff, but also introduce two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, bar individual users, bar individual IPs, and there's even suspicious changes and stuff coming into later updates in DSM, such as mass file change detection and more, all of which are being integrated into DSM all of the time. And if something isn't available, you've always got that container manager application to add things from a repository of ready-made container images that you can install onto the system. Or if you wish, and it isn't strictly recommended by Synology, but nonetheless, install the community hub for homebrew applications. Obviously, those are not within Synology's remit of supported apps, and it can invalidate your warranty or damage your system using some of these applications, but nonetheless, having that access is going to be desirable to some. And talking of access, we've already talked about compatibility, and if we look at the storage manager, we can see here that not only can we manage all of the individual drives, we can go ahead and check for their status, run checks on their health, alert and more, as well as creating individual new areas of storage and setting up SSD cache easily. Yes, let's face it, Synology are clamping down on that compatibility, which definitely has annoyed a lot of users, but still nonetheless it's nice to have these kind of variable factors at your fingertips presented in a very user-friendly way. Again, I could wax lyrical about this platform, but as mentioned, all of these videos I've highlighted will go into way more detail, and although they will eat up hours of your life, you'll get a better understanding of just what the strengths of DSM are. Is it perfect? Lord no. The lack of ZFS is going to be a pain for some of you. It is a much more rigid platform. If you've used console gaming versus PC gaming, it will give you some idea about this being a stable, if somewhat rigid and closed system in many ways. Things like semantic search are not here, where I would be able to look for something based on contextual information crawled by AI, something we're seeing increasingly on different NAS platforms, and something that although Synology have engaged with AI on Synology Photos and started rolling out the integrated AI package add-on in Synology AI Console that's currently in beta, it has to be said that the level of those advantages afforded to you in terms of traditional day-to-day use and as assistance for file searching and contextual information from non-traditional media, so again video or audio files where contextual information that could be pulled via OCR and AI language recognition are not present here, but I'm sure those are things that one day Synology will roll in. Ultimately, the controls, the presentation is absolutely A1, and as always with a Synology solution, a great deal of the money you're spending is on this platform. Bottom line, is this a good system? I think it is. I think the hardware we're seeing here is very Synology, and again, we've got to at least applaud the fact they've maintained that price point over time, but it is becoming an increasingly more locked down system, and for lots of users that didn't really like the idea of a turnkey NAS solution limiting a lot of the scalability over the years, this, if anything, is underlining that point they make quite regularly. That drive compatibility, at least at launch, the rollout, the messaging, it's a complete mess, and I think there are going to be a lot of users on day one that are going to find that very, very off-putting. DSM runs great on this, and the applications and services with DSM has always been the case, have been worth the price of admission for many users, and there are a huge amount of users, by the way, who are so in love with or rely upon or just enjoy the use of DSM and its applications and services so much that these changes in policies by the brand won't make a difference, because they'll see how much Seagate, WD and Toshiba drives are, and then look at Synology's drives, which are, you know, originally from some of those brands but with Synology firmware on board, and just think, do you know what, hey ho, I'll go for that option anyway because the software is worth it. And they understand that in a world of apples, in a world of brands that are increasingly closing on their own ecosystems, that for them it makes a lot of sense. But I know that's not going to be for everyone, and there is a reason why everyone is really mad about this. Ultimately, Synology needs to be clear about the messaging when it comes to utilizing third-party drives, because I think otherwise it's really going to significantly harm their sales of this device and the rest of their series as a whole right now. And although ultimately, let's be realistic, if they are going to maintain that price point, they're probably selling these devices at a loss at this point, if not barely breaking even. At least breaking even is better than losing money on these solutions, and I think Synology needs to be a lot clearer about the messaging. But and in of itself, and if you are okay with that more refined compatibility listing, this is still a great 4-base solution from Synology. I don't like the removal of 10GBE, I'll tell you that right now. The option, or the scalability I should say, to upgrade to 10GBE is needless on this system, and I believe it's being done simply to upsell the upcoming DS1525 Plus down the road, which does have that 10G upgrade. But that aside, every other hardware improvement on this is pretty darn good. And if you are looking at upgrading from a 5 or 10 year generation device that you've 5 or 10 year old generation device towards this, and you are locked in on that ecosystem as much as you are for whatever your reason, this is a great solution for you. And Synology drives, by the way, they're not bad. They are good. They've gone for good, durable, performing drives, with the exception of those M.2 NVMe's. Please bring out some high performance ones, please. But they're still nonetheless those policies are putting a lot of people off. I'm sorry to keep doubling down on that, but that is the big takeaway right now for a lot of users. But what do you guys think? There will be a much, much, much deeper dive on this system coming soon in a follow-up video to this. I just wanted to get this review out of the way to balance between those users that care and those don't. But thank you so much for watching. There are links in the description to get hold of this device for yourself, as well as articles below where we've gone into a bit more detail about the hardware makeup and comparing against other brands and their solutions right now. So I do recommend you check those out. And if you found this video helpful, and if you were going to buy this solution from those sites I've listed below anyway, please use those links to do so. It results in a small commission coming to me and Eddie here at NAS Compares. It's literally just us doing all of this, the support, the website, the articles, the guides, the reviews, the videos, and it really helps us do what we do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.